Evening and welcome to the special meeting of Kimberley City Council for Monday, November the 7th, held here on the homelands of the Ktunaxa peoples. So it's special in that this is the first of what will be many financial plan discussions. So from here well into the new year, we're probably meeting every other week on the financial plan, and then every other week, every other Monday will be the regular meeting. So no rest for the wicked over the next couple of months. This may be our first meeting, but it's pretty clear that staff work on this has been underway for quite a while, probably since May when we approved the last budget. Things started on the next one. So thanks for all the early work on this, Krista. So without further ado, let's adopt the agenda. Please. Councillor McBain, thank you. And Councillor Fox seconds. All those in favor? Motion is carried. All right, so let's receive the report first and foremost, and then we can turn it over to Krista to go through the details. And I think I counted 8 directions, 8 resolutions in here. And as we have in previous years, we'll deal with each of these resolutions as we move through the presentation. So could I have a mover to receive the report, please? Councillor Cairns, thank you. And Councillor McGuire seconds. All those in favor? Motion's carried. Okay, with that out of the way, Krista, over to you.
Excellent. Thank you, and good evening, Mayor and Council. As the Mayor mentioned, this is the first of a series of budget meetings. The guidance provided by Council tonight will help form the next 5-year financial plan, which is 2026-2030, which requires adoption by the 15th of 2026. The presentation meeting here. Doesn't look like it's working. I'll give you some keys. Okay. Excellent. So yes, here's our topic. Here's the list of our topics of discussion for this evening. Much of this information Council will have already seen in previous years. But it's a good review and it makes for a good foundation of information, which will help guide staff for the upcoming budget year. So if we head into revenue sources here, this is the primary focus of tonight's presentation. It is just the revenue sources and what's available to the city in order to fund their operations. And as listed on the slide in front of you, there are the approved revenue sources that the city can collect funds through, as in accordance with the community charter. And of course, our major funding source is property taxes. We also have up there parcel taxes, local service taxes, which we don't have currently. However, we have had in the past. Taxation of utility company properties and user fees such as recreation facilities, as utilities, and then fines and other penalties. And of course, revenues received by way of agreement, enterprise, gift, grant, or otherwise. And of course, we rely heavily on grants to fund a lot of our major infrastructure projects. So we go to the next slide. One of the revenue sources that is not listed is flat tax. And we do currently collect the flat tax, which was permitted previously by legislation that was introduced in 1990, but later repealed. We are now working under the authority of the residential flat tax regulation since it's repealed. Those communities who did put in the flat tax are able to continue with the flat tax under the residential tax regulation. So all that to say is that all of our revenue that we collect for the city within a year, we have to report in our 5-year financial plan under the community charter within these categories. So we need to demonstrate the amount of the property value tax we're collecting, price of taxes, fees and charges, borrowing rent, and other sources. So if you look at, this is the table that was pulled right from our last 5-year financial plan in the 2025 to 2029 year. And of course, it shows again that we collect 13 million through property value tax, which is typically our largest revenue source. However, it is slightly skewed there under grants. They're showing 23 million. This is because we had anticipated being further along in the wastewater treatment plant project and had anticipated earning more of that revenue in 2025. So that shows in 2025 that we were going to get 46%, but typically our main source of revenue is property value tax, and as well as the user fees for water, sewer, garbage, recycling, and organic.
So Krista, that, just to be clear, that 23 million will not be received in 2025.
Right, it's being deferred to
At least
align with the construction.
Okay. So, thanks.
Well, so our revenue sources are split between 3 funds, which are shown on the next slide. Our main fund is the general fund, and then it encapsulates everything that's not water and sewer. So that's going to be roads, facilities, administration, and protective services, among others. And this is where we see the collection of our property tax in the fund as well. The sewer and water funds are self-funded utilities, and they are not subsidized through property tax. So the revenue to fund those 2 funds, sewer and water, are collected through user fees. So let's take a look at property tax first. In our previous financial plan, there were 2 policies set out, one in relation to the tax and then how the tax rate is distributed. So the first policy there is that each year as part of the annual budget process, the level of property tax revenue will be determined by council according to the operating capital needs of the community. And that to minimize the burden of property taxpayers, the city will continue to focus on enhancing non-tax revenue sources with the objective being to provide maximum efficiency with a reasonable level of taxation, while also making provision for future infrastructure and service needs. Additionally, that second policy statement says that the annual percentage adjustment to municipal property taxes, if any, will be the same across all property classes. So this was established in the last 5-year plan. So if we look at property value tax, one of the determining factors of how much tax will be charged is a property's assessment, and that is determined by the BPSA, which is an independent provincial crown corporation. It determines property values as of July 1st of the previous year and categorizes the property into one or more of the 9 classes, which are listed on the next slide. So here are the 9 classes. One at the bottom there is farm, which doesn't apply to Kimberley here. Neither does managed forest or major industry. So the remaining property taxes or the remaining assessments are how we collect property tax within the city of Kimberley. And as we demonstrate on the next slide, most of that tax base is residential. So in 2025, that first column, you can see we collected, or there was $2.4 billion worth of property, assessed value property within the city of Kimberley, and 2.2 billion of that related to residential. And the next highest is 126.7 million. So how that translates to tax dollars is the next column. So we collected a total of $13 million, with 11 million of that being coming from residential property. So that works out to 85.43% of taxes collected through residential property. The next highest being business, which is the 1.6 million. As we go further right into this table, we can see how that ranks amongst other communities within the province. So within residential, because we rely heavily on those properties, we are ranked higher. We're at 2,868. Whereas on the flip side, we're on the lower side with regard to industrial. So I have noted at the bottom there that the analysis does not include flat tax of 1.375 million, and I'll get into that into a little bit more detail further on in the presentation. But these just relate to property value tax. But if we were to consider the flat tax within the amount collected for residential property, that would put us even further up into the 27th highest in the province as far as residential property tax. It is I should note that in the previous 2 years, we have seen incremental decreases of the proportion related to residential properties. Last year, we were at 86.07%, and 2023 was 87.28%, and that's due to incremental increases into business.
So, Krista, the increase in the business, the class 6, is a couple of percentage points over the last couple of years. Is that assessment driven?
Yes. Yeah.
Primarily.
Yes. Absolutely. So if we look at the next slide, I have a comparison of neighboring communities and how we look compared to them. And of course, again, because we're reliant heavily on residential properties, and this is actually takes into account what taxes are on the representative house, which is the average home residential property within Kimberley. And in 2025, that value was $572,175, which was up from 2024 at $540,885. But we can see on that 572,000 assessed value of a residential property, they were paying approximately just over $3,000 of municipal tax. So we're at the top there. However, if we take into consideration all property taxes, so school and hospital and municipal, plus parcel taxes, plus utility charges, we've moved down in that chart there, number 4. The charges on the representative houses, all encompassing is 5,000.
So it's a regional district as well.
Correct.
All those that we collect on behalf of.
Exactly.
And that also is for a full more.
That's right. It doesn't. Yeah. So if we look at property tax multiples, this allows council some ability to control the allocation. And the base rate for a multiple is always the residential tax rate. And we have to adjust it for the flat tax in our case. As Kimberley is primarily reliant on residential and business, see that 94.2% of the assessed values are related to residential, 5.2 for business. There's not a whole lot of opportunity to distribute the tax collection across multiple properties. But there's that ability, and we'll get more into detail later on. So here we have another chart just comparing multiples. Again, you see on the utility side, we're 137, 161 light industrial. With light industrial, there's only one municipality behind us that has a lower rate. So we are very much on the low end of the rates here. which we will dive into a little bit deeper in the next section here.
So, Krista, on the utilities,
Mhm.
so we can only take a maximum increase every year. So how do we end up? It shouldn't theoretically everybody be the same with respect to the collection of utility taxes? Like, why would we be so low on that list? Like, we're at 5.3 and the provincial average is 10.
It's in this case, it's a relation of a multiple, so it might differ based on the residential rate, because it's in relation to the residential rate of the hospital. But there is some control there.
Okay, so as residential rates vary,
Yeah.
so will the
The-
so will the utilities. Okay. So that basically just means we don't have much. It's really small.
So if we dive deeper into our light industrial tax rate, you can see that we're quite low compared to the neighboring community. In total, we collect only 18,675 from the light industrial. But this is what we had collected in 2025 from light industrial property, based on a total assessed value of all light industrial property of 3.8 million. So just to do a bit of analysis, we've taken some, on the next slide, we'll see how adding additional new assessments, how that impacts based on the current rate, as well as the higher rate, which we just used because it as an example, but it could be anything. But if we were to bring it up closer to the level of coverage, you can see the incremental increase that we would see based on the assessment. Based on our current tax collection of 18,675, if we were to have the same rate of Pembroke at this time, you could see that we would earn an additional $40,000.
So, Krista, how many properties do we have in that class?
So there are only 12 properties within the light industrial class. With a total of 3.8 million across all of them, with the highest being the micro cannabis cultivating facility, which is about 1. So they would be primarily impacted by any increases to the light industrial tax rate.
And that's based on the BC assessment definition of light industry versus commercial.
That is, yeah.
Is it, I think, if I'm not mistaken, majority of the businesses out in the M1 zone area, out in Claresville Business Park, are actually commercially classed.
I don't know about the specific I'd have to look at the specific.
Okay, not meaning to put you on the spot.
Mhm.
That would be worth. I know there was one or two that came up a while back that appeared to that it was a kind of that it would be light industrial. And in fact, it was being passed as a commercial. And it wasn't that we were choosing to do that. It's BC assessment says you must do that.
That's right. BC assessment determines the primary use of it. And the sign.
We'll follow up.
Okay. So this is the point where we're looking for some direction from council for the first one of the evening pertaining to light industrial regarding the distribution. And if council wishes to maintain what's been already described in last year's 5-year financial plan bylaw, which is to have the same distribution across all the categories, that first resolution on the page there would be that direction we had to tell our council if we need to change that rate distribution and we can look at the second distribution.
Council? Comments? Go ahead, Council James.
Thank you. It's interesting the tax rate, light industrial tax rate being so low and that the recommendation noting the recommendation in here to gradually raise light industrial tax rate to better match comparable communities, help ease the tax load on residential properties as light industrial properties are added to the assessment base. And it seems reasonable to me to do that because we don't want to do it abruptly. It needs to be phased in gradually over time. And so I guess I would like to have an understanding of what might be a reasonable rate to apply to doing that, to doing a very gradual increase. And I'm wondering, Krista, if you might comment on what might be a reasonable rate to use to adjust the light industrial.
A reasonable increase, yeah. So right now, we're collecting a total of $18,675 for all our industrial property. So if we consider that, if the city would like to move towards collecting double that, so there would be a 100% increase. And our multiple would still be around 9%. So that would still be on the low end, being even 100% increase to double the amount of tax that you're going to be that's so that gives a general idea of how much.
Yeah, we're starting with a small number.
Those,
So
exactly.
percentages, are difficult. Councilor McBain.
Yeah, I think I would support a stepped up increase if we were to go that road. And I'm kind of like kind of the same thinking or I'm just curious about what that recommended value would be, because I don't really have a sense for what that would be. But I do find curious though is that if we think back 2 weeks ago, we have one department within our city basically saying we need to do more to promote light industrial taxes. And by raising the industrial rate, which I do think is the right thing to do to catch up, that's kind of counter to what the planning department said. So just kind of an interesting anecdote there. I mean, given the amount is relatively nominal, and given the lack of movement there, I mean, I think it does make sense to at least try to move the needle a little bit to get some better parity within the asset classes.
Further? Councilor McGuire.
Yeah, I think it'd be reasonable to at least have our light industrial rate similar to a business rate, because essentially they're businesses. Right now, our light industrial rate is at 0.89 multiplier, so that means they're paying less tax per assessed value than a residential property. I don't know how many years we want to go, but like if we were to get it to the business rate over, let's say, 6 years or something like that, I think that would be reasonable. So it seems like a pretty easy calculation. If we're about 1.5 difference, then divide it by 6, and you've got a number, maybe increase by 0.3 or something like that per year. I think it's a pretty easy calculation, but maybe if we have something to aim at, like what are we aiming at? Are we aiming at getting it to business levels? In that case, it's a pretty easy calculation to see how long it's going to take to get there at different rates.
Go ahead. Sit down the back.
Yeah, I understand the concept of having to charge more and get us up to, we have the comparison of Cranbrook here. The one thing I'd just like to say is, in doing that, we need to look at what we're offering, and water and sewer needs to be offered to the people that are coming there, and good quality paved roads, so it's safe for their customers and their employees to get in and out safely. To attract more business for those light industrial, which would attract. That's all I'll say.
No, that's excellent comment, Councilor Van Beck. I think if you talk to any of the businesses out there, the general state of, if our roadways in a residential neighborhood were similar, we'd be getting a lot of pushback from tax increase from neighborhoods as well. Councilor McBain.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you, Kevin. I think the only caveat there is that, you know, if we go ahead and we improve some of those roads like you're suggesting in utilities, and Jim, you may know the answer to this, correct me if I'm not, most of those lots are privately owned, correct, those industrial lots?
They are.
Yeah, so, I mean, if they're not being sold right now, and I understand, you know, not having utilities is not attractive, and it's certainly not attractive, or not nice to have unpaved roads, but you know, as soon as we go ahead with that too, the values of those lots will go up accordingly as well, which makes them somewhat less attractive to invest in. So I'm not saying don't do it, but I'm just saying we have to think about that as well.
Further. Go ahead.
You're not wrong. No, but maybe just to stir the pot, if we could start looking at, like grants for it. If there's, you know, we can chase that a little bit, whatever we can flex, whatever, just to promote and make it awesome.
So you mentioned Rocky Mountain Farms. At least I think that's their kind of the forward facing name. What impact would that have, 100% increase have on Rocky Mountain, since they're the largest assessed value out there?
They would take, it would be approximately $11,000 addition if we were to do 100% increase over and above the residential or other costs increase. So yes, that would be the largest portion of the.
Councilor McGuire, and
Yeah.
CAO.
You know, I largely agree with some of the comments around the industrial park, but again, you know, we're not talking about all of the properties that are being taxed at that rate right now. Essentially, there's, by the sounds of it, only one property down there that's currently taxed at this industrial rate. So it's kind of an unfair advantage to other businesses in a sense. My suggestion, you know, we're looking at 0.89 right now for light industrial. We're looking at 2.36 for the rest of the businesses in that industrial park. My suggestion would be to increase by 0.25 the multiplier this year. That would be my suggestion. And that brings us up to 1.14. It means that they're getting taxed slightly higher than residential this year, this coming year. And then, you know, we can kind of spread it out a little bit. I don't want to hit any business in our community with 100% increase in 1 year. I think that's ridiculous.
Go ahead.
Yeah, just further to Councilor McGuire's point, that I think there's a couple of properties in that park that are tax light industrial, but the majority, like the breweries in town, for example, they're light industrial properties. So the majority are not in that park. Those aren't really the properties we're talking about. So yeah, and the notion of like if we didn't have any properties that were in that class, it'd be easy to kind of step on it, increase it gradually. So if more light industrial properties came on, they'd be taxed at a more reasonable rate. But yeah, stepping on too hard, I think would be, you know, would have a significant impact on those few businesses that are in that property. So just need to be cognizant.
Councilor Cairns.
Yeah, I like the approach of just, you know, a very, a small increase over the other rate so that we don't fall into the same type of situation that we did with, say, the bulk water, where we've got so much catch up to do and then it becomes really difficult. So I do want to see an increase happen here. And yeah, I Councillor McGuire's recommendations are good and I'd support going that route.
Okay, so how did you want to, I think it would behoove us to see the detail behind that. So that we know exactly what this would be, not just kind of high level percentage.
Mhm.
You take that?
Yes, you bet.
Back?
Bring it back for the, yes.
Yeah.
Of course.
Okay, cool. Thanks for the comments on that, Council.
Okay, excellent. So next we'll take a look at the flat tax. As mentioned previously, we're one of 5 communities in the province who still have the flat tax in place. And some of the rationale behind why the flat tax was implemented is that it assumes that every home uses some basic level of services regardless of its assessed value. However, some of the criticisms have been that it's inherently vertically inequitable and that the owners of lower value homes subsidize the property tax of higher value. So that's a bit of some of the pros and cons of the flat tax legislation. And
So Krista, just a little bit of background. When this came in back in the early 90s, the number of municipalities in the province that actually were under this were really small. I can't remember the exact number, but it was measured in, I don't know, a dozen. They typically were the resource-based towns that were losing their industry kind of as they were looking down the road and were trying to encourage and had new construction that was going on. So the cost of construction was many multiples of the existing value of the properties at the time. And so the whole idea behind the flat tax was to buffer the increase on those new properties and encourage construction. That was the the theory behind it. And as you mentioned, we've only got 4 or 5
oh, yeah, we're one of them.
that have continued.
So the next slide shows of all the communities who do still charge flat tax, what the flat tax is for each community, how much they're collecting in total taxation through the flat tax, and the percentage of total taxation. So at 9.5%, the flat tax, you're collecting the most out of these communities in relation to the property value tax of residential properties. But it is important to note that they do have, some of these communities have significant portion of their tax revenue coming from other classes, such as major industrial business. So a little bit of history on how how the city of Kimberley has charged the flat tax in the past. It was first implemented, we had $400 on improved and $100 on unimproved residential property. And that was amended several times since implementation. And then in 2015, it was set at $786 for improved residential properties and $310 for unimproved. However, for the next financial plan, it was decided that council decided that or passed this resolution that the amount of flat tax on improved properties be reduced by $80 per year for a 10-year phase out, with a corresponding increase to mill rate tax. And that's how any changes in the flat tax has been handled. It simply was transferred to the property value tax so that there was no reduction in total residential tax.
It's net zero.
Correct.
And the corresponding increase, just for council's education, was 3%. So we were taking a 3% increase in our residential tax rate in order to offset that $80.
So since that resolution, there have been several reductions noted on the next slide. So we can see from 2016 to 2022, the improved residential properties have decreased. And over that same period, the unimproved residential properties, there were 2 adjustments in 2020 and 2021. In the last 3 years, they have been left unadjusted. So those rates have remained the same. However, if we consider that in relative to total tax collection, the proportion that we're collecting through flat tax has been decreasing. So in 2025, it was 9.5%. In 2024, it was 10.4%, just because of the nature of property value tax. So it's increasing. The proportion collected through flat tax has been decreasing steadily. So on the next slide, I'm provided a table which shows the flat tax levies that were charged in 2025. So we had 4,190 For residential properties at $306, providing $1.28 million. And 241 unimproved residential properties at $386, bringing $83,000 for a total of $1.275 million. Roughly for to the flat tax collection.
Councilor McBean.
This is a question, I guess, for Jim. So I assume that a decent percentage of the unimproved residential would be double lots where maybe there's one house on it and an adjacent lot that's being used or not being. Do we have a sense of what that percentage would be? And if you don't, that's fine. I'm just curious.
Yeah, sorry, without having a bit of a closer look.
Yeah.
I'm not really sure what.
Yeah, I would be curious. So just in general, I would really like to see us actually continue to put more pressure on unimproved residential lots to develop them. And if there can be a mechanism, and if one of the challenges is those types of situations where maybe you have a house on a double lot, if there was some kind of mechanism or way that we could make it easier to separate those out, and I know I'm just kind of spitballing here, but I guess just the bottom line is I would like to see us, whether it's actually residential, industrial, commercial, whatever, anything unimproved, I would like to see come up, put pressure on folks. But yeah, that was really my only question. So maybe Jim, just to follow up on that, just so we can have a sense of like what we're looking at for truly unimproved kind of standalone lots.
Yeah, I think we can put something together. Just have a look at a map. I think that like the examples you're talking about where there's a property that sits on double lots. I think in a lot of those cases, they likely amalgamated the two lots so that the taxes are less, but yeah, we can certainly bring back some.
Further to that, Mr. Mayor, and if I like, if people choose that route to amalgamate, like, no problem. I have no issue with that. It's just if there's truly empty lots sitting there that could be developed, that encouraged.
So 241 by definition. Sorry. This is the total number of infill.
Saying if somebody chose that road to amalgamate, like, fine.
Now, bear in mind that amalgamation, let's say if half of these, let's say there was 100. My sense is there's a lot less than that, but if there was 100, the average taxes in total, not just with flat tax, but the average taxes in total on are probably $1,500 a year. So if this were a strategy to amalgamate, we're looking at a lot less tax rate. Yeah. Go ahead, Councilman Black.
Yeah, and I'm not sure if that's the intention behind what we're doing here, but I agree. And a thought that I had was that the price of the actual treatment of the water that we're providing and the sewage is relatively low, but it's the infrastructure itself that costs a lot of money. And density wise, this vacant lot really should be responsible for their portion of the utilities, even though they're not paying a utility bill. So I would even support to see this cost at least equivalent to or similar to a utility bill for an undeveloped lot, because really it's kind of lost opportunity from our sense, and we're paying to run lines by the house, but I mean by the lot, but there's no house. So yeah, in that sense, I don't have a strong feeling either way on the improved residential flat tax levy rate, but I wouldn't mind seeing an increase to the unimproved.
Yeah, great comment. So as the price goes up, those that want to keep the extra lot, amalgamate, will pay for the survey and everything else to do it. And the others will be encouraged to either develop or sell or develop. Go ahead.
Yeah, in terms of the unimproved, I think this is kind of an opportunity that we have. And I agree with the comments that have been made. And I would also, like to see, as you say, all property classes. So, perhaps this is a way to help us with the vacant commercial properties that we have too.
Yeah, I think the flat tax is $1 million.
It's all non-residential. Okay, all right, good. And yeah, just in terms of the comments that Councillor McGuire made as well, you know, the services as well as snow removal roads, all of it is added to by having those vacant parcels. So yeah, I'd be in support of that.
Further?
Yeah, just another quick note, you know, this will apply to new subdivisions that haven't been built out yet too, which encourages people to build a little bit quicker and, you know, at least we're again collecting utility fees or something similar to a utility fee from a lot that's not been developed in a new subdivision. It just encourages developers to get moving a little bit quicker.
Subdivision, unsold lot is by definition. So it should be captured in that. Councilman.
Yeah, just one more question or just one more comment, I guess, on the flat tax. You know, all of the things that we've discussed in the past, you know, there's legitimate arguments that can be made that the flat tax on a whole is a regressive tax. And, you know, kind of just the norm within North American way of taxation on residential properties is just using a market rate. The only caveat, the only thing that I struggle with reducing the flat tax on improved parcels in town, residential parcels, is we still have not been able to catch up with providing enough kind of next step senior housing for folks who've been in a house for, you know, 40, 50 years and just watch this thing, especially in the last 5 to 10 years, just really take off and appreciate. And I just have some concerns on just, you know, having more of a shock to the system on that demographic within our town. So I just want us to just be mindful of that when we're, you know, making that decision. I totally understand the rationale for lowering it. I mean, it completely makes sense to me. And there will be people at the top end that I don't want to use the word benefit, but it's certainly not going to hit them at all. And that's kind of a unintended consequence of this. But I just really want us to be mindful of that issue with seniors.
Yeah, so there are almost 2,000 seniors defined by 65. Pardon me, Canada Census definition of seniors. And in Kimberley, 70% of them are still living in single family homes. Councillor Potts.
On here. So I'm just jumping ahead a couple slides here, Krista. Sorry, that guy. But just if I'm reading correctly, if we get rid of the flat tax altogether, right, and we put it all into variable, the people who would pay the most would be people who are in a property that's $1 million or more.
Right, distributed to the higher value.
Right, and so they would see an increase just shy of $300 annually.
Well, it depends if on the next table, it shows what the historical changes have, how that has impacted various levels of values of homes. Yeah, so this is the historical. for
Page 27.
Yeah, I was on the net.
Yeah.
Sorry, I jumped
Okay.
ahead one more. Because I guess what I'm just wondering is if like, is sort of the worst case scenario is that the $1 million houses are seeing a $300 increase to their taxes and getting rid of the flat tax. Like, it's not a huge increase to somebody's, like most people are less than that, right? Like even seniors living in a house that's, you know, they've been in forever that wasn't worth millions of dollars that now is, or not millions, but like, we're not necessarily talking about people being out thousands and thousands of dollars in a tax shift in this. Like for the most majority of people, it'll be 300 or less,
Right. that-
or they'll get a little
So-
bit of a benefit.
Where's the 300?
I'm a slide ahead. That's, oh, that one. Yeah.
So this represents if the flat tax were eliminated entirely and how that would distribute the flat tax to those values.
Yeah, so the break even is at 500,000. Basically, everybody 500 and over is going to see an increase, and everybody under that would see an increase.
But not like a crazy substantial increase. Like I mean, depending on what your sort of personal budget is, it's not like doubling somebody's property taxes, right? Or like 100% increase, right? Like it wouldn't be that kind of increase we'd be talking about.
Kristen?
Right, so at the $1 million assessed value property at the bottom of that table, with the flat tax, variable tax, that $1 million property would pay $5,182. If the flat tax were eliminated and that now moved to the variable tax, that property will now pay $5,478 for an additional $296.
But not like doubling, like we were
Right.
talking about with industrial. Okay.
Here you go.
Go ahead, Sandra. Sandra, are you?
Yes, yes,
Go ahead.
sorry, I had to move away for a sec.
You have a comment?
Uh, no, I didn't put a comment. I just had to move away for a second there.
Sorry, Kevin. Go ahead.
This infill number 241, does that include all of the next phases of Forest Crown as well? And I wonder with, the latest numbers that we got for housing that we need with the amount of housing that's coming, how will that reflect on our taxes with that much being developed? Are our taxes going to continue to go up or?
That all
will we
comes
be-
under non-market change,
Okay,
which Chris is going to go through here in a couple of slides.
there you go. I'm ahead of myself apparently.
A little bit.
Apologize. Question answered.
So, but your question about would that include future developments? And the answer is no. The 241 would only be those lots that are.
That are
for
existing there
sale
now.
today.
Okay,
Yeah, approved for sale today.
okay. Perfect. Thanks.
Just to clarify, the vacant lot would have been a vacant lot as of July 1st, 2024. Which is what PT assessments would take, so at
Right.
like July 1st of 2024 would be included in the 2025 assessment, which is that 241.
So anything that has come into inventory since last July would not be included here. They will be captured next July. It's a year behind. Thanks. Go ahead, Sue.
Thanks. In terms of the improved residential parcels, my view is, we have a fairer method of assessing taxes and we should get back on board with shifting to that. Looking at the 2016 resolution that said that the amount of the flat tax on improved properties be reduced by $80 per year for a 10-year phase out with corresponding increase to mill rate tax to ensure no loss to total taxation revenue. And I just, I wonder, Krista, if you have any comments about what the implications would be. And you already have touched on those with Councillor Fox. But essentially, you've already said, there would be no change to the overall tax collected. It would be a redistribution of how
That's
those are
correct.
collected. And
Yes.
we do know that, it's actually not fair to be collecting the same amount of tax on per parcel, regardless of the value of that parcel. So, I mean, when we look at that, this is quite an outdated thing to be doing. And so, yeah, I would be in support of actually bringing forward that 2016 resolution to work towards phasing this out over a 10-year period of time.
It's in place. It's the decision we would make is whether or not consistent with that resolution. Go ahead.
Yeah, and just, I think everybody knows too, but just for any folks who don't know, I think, obviously a lot of the reasons we had pauses in the last couple of years were just to try to help mitigate some of the inflationary effects that COVID was having, just kind of exploding everything. So that was the rationale on some of the pauses that we've had in the past. And I know most of the people around the table are quite aware of that, but just in case.
Okay, so what do we wish to do here? Let's go back to the unimproved, first of all. We had a conversation around that, but there was no real consensus on the direction to Krista. Go ahead.
I'm just wondering if we like got rid of it on improved completely, can you keep it on unimproved?
They're two separate.
So you can keep one and not have, okay, that would be like, I would like to see happen if that's an option, just get rid of it on improved properties, but not wait, because like theoretically that should be done by now if we hadn't put the pause on it for all those years, like next year it would be done. And I don't know, when you break it down like that, it doesn't look like it's going to be incredibly prohibitive to most people in those higher classes, but it could be pretty beneficial to some people in those lower ones. So I don't know.
Yeah, the only thing I would say to that is I don't think I would ever want to take this down to zero, because if we lose it, we can't get it back. And we don't know what the future may hold. There's a whole ton of instability in the world. And I don't even know what the situation would be to apply it in a different way. But I think if there's a piece of legislation that we can hang on to, even if it's down to the bare minimum where we keep it, I think that's advantageous to us in the long run. So I just wanted to throw that comment out there rather than going all the way to zero and losing it.
Mr. Mayor, if I may comment?
Yep, go ahead, Sandra.
I have been thinking that over the last 2 or 3 years as well. It was a situation that arose that no one predicted was going to happen, and it served its purpose at that time. Being grandfathered allows us to keep that into perpetuity as an opportunity should something unforeseen show up. But we have the opportunity to increase that or whatever, as long as it exists. Once it's gone forever. So we can take it down really low and still keep the opportunity in place. But getting rid of it, it's kind of like an ace in the hole somehow or other. We can't really predict what that might look like, but some kind of an emergency that happened in our community, perhaps a forest fire, perhaps some kind of flooding, whatever it might be that would change the look of things. I think we have a bit of a kind of a leader, if you will, in hanging on to that and never letting it quite go away.
Go ahead, Councilor McBain.
Yeah, I guess I forgot to give my recommendation. So I kind of agree with Sue. I think we should get back on track. I would support with the improved residential properties going back to that $80 reduction. And as far as the unimproved residential, I would prefer to have a little bit more data to go on with that, kind of from the discussion that we had previously, but just in general, I would be willing to support that if we're at 386 right now. So I would be happy with having another increase, somewhere between $50 and $100 on that. But I, as far as the improved, I support the $80 reduction.
So is that a resolution?
So the resolution is that council, directs staff to prepare the amendment to the bylaw on improved residential properties, on improved residential properties from 306 to whatever the $80 off that would be.
Just to add on to that, I'd also suggest tagging on that bit about there being a corresponding increase to the variable rate tax so that we're left whole there. If that's the intention.
Yeah, that is the intention. Okay. The second one was that. Yep, hang on a second. The second one would be that council direct staff for an amendment to the bylaw on unimproved residential properties from 386 to. Go ahead. 386 to 500. So on the first resolution on the improved residential properties from 306 to 220, what was it? Sorry, 226, $80 for the taxation year. So that is on the floor. Do I have a mover? Councillor Cairns moves and Councillor Bain seconds. All those in favor? Any opposed? Okay, that motion is carried. The second is that direct staff on the unimproved go from 386 to 500. Is there a mover? Councilor McGuire moves. Councilor Fox seconds. Any further discussion? All those in favor? I'm opposed to that. The motion is carried. Anything else on that, Krista?
Nope, that is all. Thank you for that
Okay, good.
guidance. So next we can move into non-market assessment change. So if we go to the slide. Okay. So the assessed values each year are primarily influenced by two factors. One is market change and the other is non-market change. Now, market change doesn't result in new tax revenue. The market change in assessed values is simply offset within the tax rate. So that doesn't result in tax revenue.
So this is really important that every year there's confusion amongst the masses on this. If there is a 10% increase on average in our tax rates, in our assessments, we adjust the tax rate so that anybody 10% or less, there is a zero increase in your taxes. And in fact, on the less part, there could actually be a decrease, I guess, if you are in a neighborhood that has gone below the 10%. So a 3 or 4% increase, you actually could see a decrease in your tax rate. The only ones that see an increase on market assessment are those over that 10%, over whatever the average is. We try and educate the public on that every year. There just is so much confusion on it. If the assessment goes up by 10% or 50%, it doesn't mean the taxes go up by that.
Well, but
Nor our revenue, I guess, looking at it from our point of view, we get a revenue increase
that's correct.
for that assessment.
Yes, excellent. Yeah. So what does result in new tax revenue is non-market change, and the types of things that cause non-market change are new construction, which is primarily what we've been seeing. It also can come from boundary extension, property cost changing, extension status changing, and subdivision of existing areas or property zoning because it changes the value as BC assessments. So the non-market change that BC assessment determines each year does result in new tax revenue.
So the biggie is new construction, right?
That's
By
correct.
far,
Yeah,
right?
that's the primary contributor for the city for sure. Over the last few years, we've been in construction, and we can see that on the next table. This outlines what we've seen as far as new tax revenue as a result of the non-market change. So in 2025, see on the far right there that we had new tax revenue of 369,000 as a result of non-market change, mostly attributable to residential property. Previous years have been.
So we talk every quarter to get an update on building permit value that comes from the planning department. I think it's important to note that this does not correlate to that all that well, because we can't take the tax revenue until there's actual possession. on any of the properties. And so what we see here are those properties that have been built and have come into inventory, I guess, for lack of a better term, in the current year. So we have a carryover in 2026 that's probably fairly substantial. In addition to what will be permitted and built in the year.
Right, and again, the number represented in 2025 is actually representative of new inventory as of July 1st, 2024.
Oh, right.
Delay.
July 1st thing, yeah. So we have a buildup there. If we take a look at what our building permit values have been since July, there will be a substantial contribution to the tax revenue next year as well.
And the 5-year financial plan does take into account we anticipate $100,000 to come from non-market change, and that's captured within the financial plan already. So anything over and above that, as we will see on the next page, is additional revenue.
So why 100K? And what do we do with that money? How is that money used?
So that's typically used to offset the property tax increase. However, in the resolution that was made as part of last year's budget deliberations, council resolved that any additional revenue earned over and above that $100,000 would be transferred to reserves to help infrastructure.
Right, okay. Councilor McBain. Go ahead.
Krista, is there any, is there any reason that $100,000, just given the trends that we've seen over the last couple of years, and given that value is used to offset the taxes, is there any way or reason that couldn't be 50 or 200 even? I mean, we've been fairly consistent, and I certainly don't want to push the envelope of, having to ask for more money down the road. But what's your sense on the ability to maybe bump that under? So
We need the reserves too.
yeah, so just further to that, so your recommendation would be just leave it as it is for now, and then that's good.
There isn't, I guess, reliable data to help us determine what the future number needs in order to better predict.
Yeah, no, that's totally fair. Yeah, just wanted to get your sense on it. Okay, thanks.
So this slide here is just going into more detail about what I discussed, that through deliberations of last year's 5-year financial plan, council resolved that any new tax revenue earned over for the non-market change over and above that $100,000 does get transferred. So in 2025, this is what it looks like for 369 less than $100,000 would result in transfer to the reserves of $269,000. So we do have preliminary figures from BCE assessment as far as 2026 non-market change, and that's on the next slide.
So this is July 1st this year.
2025. Correct. So this is just ranked in relation to residential non-market change, just for demonstration purposes. So Kimberley is looking at 39, just under $40 million of non-market change in relation to residential properties, and 1.4 for goods and services properties. So if these don't, if the non-market change into the final numbers end up being close to that, we can reasonably expect approximately 213,000 based on 2025 tax rates being new tax revenue based on the 2026 non-market change represented here. So we're not seeking any direction because these numbers are not final at this stage, just for council information at this point.
Council, any further questions or comments on this?
Makes sense. And the next piece is on municipal tax collection adjustment. Again, we're really in the preliminary stages here. It's just to provide counsel that the municipal tax collection adjustment is based on inflationary increases to goods and services, current cost of commodities, negotiated wage increases, any service level adjustment, capital reserve contributions. Those are all the type of costs that would require municipal tax collection adjustment. And every year we go through this process. What that might be based on recommendations from staff on what is needed in the upcoming year. I do just have a note there about how BC CPI has progressed from September 2024 to September 2025, showing a 1.9% increase over that 1 year period. So again, we're not looking for any guidance from council at this time. We'll be bringing forward operating budget items later in January for council.
So this year, what is our revenue per percent? I think it was 140 or 144 last year. 144,000.
The amount of revenue for 1%
What
of the
represents
tax.
1%?
It's approximately 140.
So it's still right around 140. Yes. So when we take a look at inflation at 1.9 or, roughly 2%, we're looking at about $280,000 of money that we need to put into the pot just to stay even on our service delivery.
And the CPI is not a great indicator because it's based on that of household products rather than municipal, what municipal costs are. So, it's more based on food and clothing.
Yeah. Which we're typically high.
Right. Okay, so if we can move on to parcel taxes now. In the 2025 to 2029 financial plan bylaw, this policy was set out regarding parcel taxes to consider the use of them as a way of distributing the cost of an amenity or service to the primary beneficiaries of that amenity or service. So currently we have one parcel tax in place, and that is for the aquatic center. It was for and put in place for the construction and operation of the aquatic center. And we are also, it has been proposed that a parcel tax also be used to fund the debt payments in relation to the construction and wastewater treatment. Get into a little bit deeper in the piece side. So if we look at the aquatic center parcel tax initially, this provides a little bit of history that it was put in place in 2006 with the construction of the Kimberley Aquatic Center. Originally, it only funded a portion of the deficit, the operating deficit of the aquatic center. The Boot Lake Gap Golf was under an agreement with making up the difference. However, in the 2019 to 2023 financial plan deliberation, for further transparency, council provided direction that the parcel tax be increased to fund 100% of the operating deficit, along with the debt payments that were still occurring as a result of the construction. So the next slide is a little bit more detail in relation to the actual amounts that have been charged for the parcel tax. And just to note that it is based on an estimated revenue required to offset the future operating deficit for the next year. And any amount that was collected greater than what we've actually needed is actually put into a reserve to reduce the parcel tax levy for the following year. So this enabled in 2025, as a result of those adjustments, the parcel tax was increased from $213.73 to $252. So 2025 is the final year for the debt payments on the aquatic center. And so with that dropping off, the parcel tax could be reduced by approximately $40 now that those funds are no longer needed to debt.
Councilor McBean, then Councilor Fox.
Just something to think about, as we you know, we've had this parcel tax in place and I've really think it's been great how we've separated this out to, you know, to increase the transparency, and it really helps people understand essentially what we're subsidizing, you know, for the general use of the public. I do think it's worth, though, as we are moving into a stage of having another parcel tax, albeit for a completely necessary improvement to our town, to start thinking a little bit more about what increase in user fees might look like at the pool, and try to kind of offset having another new parcel tax coming on. Like I said, albeit it's one we need, but you know, having two, you know, Mayor McCormick has said it before, you know, that's kind of, it's the norm to have an aquatic facility in town. And I think most people are happy to subsidize it, but if we can change the target a little bit over to, you know, lean on service fees a little bit more for revenue rather than the general subsidy, I think it might be something just at least worth looking.
Yeah, fair comment. Councillor Fox?
Sorry, I'm just wondering, so if we just kept it and then there's an extra $40 from every parcel tax, where does that go?
So
Is it
with
just-
the, sorry.
No, I was just wondering, like, does it just like sit in the pot and then we have like, oh no, the heater isn't heating the jacuzzi, so we have money to pay for it because we have this extra money there, or like what would we do with that?
So historically, it's been simply to fund the operations and the debt. So it would, the $40 would simply come off the parcel tax unless council has would like to allocate it to, because it's stipulated in the bylaw that
Oh,
those funds must be used on the aquatic center for the operation.
so we couldn't
Or
put it
construction.
in reserves just specifically for the aquatic center, or could we? Or would that require a whole other bylaw?
I guess there could be a resolution that council could direct additional funds to a reserve.
Okay, I'm just
Second.
sort of curious what the options are, that's all.
Right.
Yeah, so good question, Councillor Fox. So just as a reminder, roughly the operating cost of the aquatic center is about 1.2 million, roughly, per year. Is that close, Krista?
I don't have that right on the top of my head.
It's plus or minus 10%, right? 1.2 million. And the revenue we get is just over $300,000. So any increases that we're going to get, and we should keep on top of what is fair value for what we're getting, absolutely. But they're going to be minimal. So the $40, I think we have an opportunity. I think when we bring in these parcel taxes or whatever, it's going to be the same thing with the wastewater treatment plant. We provide an expectation that when it's paid off, it's paid off. And I think we should be giving $40 back. What I think we should be doing. I think that was the expectation back in 2006 when this was brought into place. And we have an opportunity here to kind of put the financing of it behind us. And that's what $40 is for. It's for financing the aquatics. So I'd like to see it's just. Go ahead.
Or jump the front there. And I think Krista mentioned that the purpose of parcel tax in the bylaw, and we'll have to have a closer look at that because I do think it says that it used to fund operations or pay the debt payments. And if that's the case, then we wouldn't be able to keep it if we wanted to. If we put that $40 into a reserve, that would be fund future capital, which isn't one of the five purposes in the bylaw. So we'll have a closer look at that. And just with regards to Councilor McBain's comments about increasing user fees, the place we want to get to in the next year, maybe two, our user fee bylaw for recreation facilities is due to be updated soon here. And we've done a bit of work, the ice facility strategy and a few other things to help put some science behind that. The place we want to get to really is to have council set up a recovery rate for those facilities. So we want to recover 30% of the expenditures on the pool, for example, for user fees. So you've got something to shoot for rather than it just, you know, operations continuing as usual and the costs rising. So that will be coming to pass at some point in the future.
Councilor McBain.
Yeah, thanks, Jim. And I think probably just to maybe quell our fears too, we still have a capital reserve fund. I mean, for, you know, for improvements like you're suggesting, Diana, exclusive of the financing savings of the $40, right? Like we still have.
We do the general capital fund that we have, which is our largest reserve. That's where we would fund things like the Paris Aquatic Center and using as we are working to develop a reserve fund policy that sets a little more structure to those and the purpose of those funds. But yes, there are reserves that exist.
Which we did this past couple of years, right? There was some major infrastructure improvements to be points. Yeah. That came from federal reserves. Yeah. Go ahead, Councilor Dwyer.
Yeah, I think it's a good timing, seeing as how we have the other personal tax coming on. It'll soften the blow a little bit, not by much. The other thing about increasing user fees, I mean, I don't know if that would work for revenue creation, but I do feel like it should be looked at as, you know, how do we generate more business? How do we get more people in there? Like, do we need to invest in the building to attract more uses? I don't know, but I think it should be looked at for sure. See if there's some way of increasing usage or increasing the value to the users so that they're willing to pay more. I don't know what it is, but I think it's worth looking at.
Yeah, good comment. Nick, not to put you on the spot, but I guess I'll put you on the spot. It seems to me, if I remember correctly, the revenues that we got pre-COVID were in the $250,000 range. And COVID really spiked usage of that aquatic center, which post-COVID has stayed at new levels. Is that? Do you know anything about that at all?
I would, I
This is a
don't,
perception.
yeah, I don't have those figures in front of me and I hate to speculate. I know from the arena side, we looked at that with the facility strategy and post like COVID saw quite a significant dip. And we're back to where we were pre-COVID levels on that. I haven't looked at the aquatic center in detail of late on that, so I have to get back.
Yeah, no, that's fine. Fair enough. Go ahead, Councilor Dunlap.
Just a question, what is the family cost to the aquatic center right now? Just, I went to Cranbrook yesterday and it was $20.
For a one-time fee.
For one time fee for adult with 2 kids. I just wanted to see what we're sitting at in comparison.
Probably really close. Do you need anything
And
more?
if I-
Krista?
Sorry, further,
Go ahead.
just to comment on what he's coming there, I absolutely think that we should look at investing more into that to attract more, like maybe that there could be, we can measure that by the gym or something for a place that could be used for other kinds of fitness, yoga, all that sort of stuff. Maybe just promote entrepreneurialism. Class and stuff like that. Just to get into offset the cost.
Councilor McGuire.
Yeah, we do have that multi-use room there. Maybe there's better use for it. And yeah, the family drop-in is $19.
Okay, Krista, do you need anything more from us on this?
No, once we have the fiscal 2025 year finalized, we'll have more accurate numbers to see.
No motion on this.
That's right, yeah.
All right, awesome.
And similarly, we won't need any direction from council on the wastewater treatment plant. It's been the proposed parcel tax for the construction of the treatment plant. But this is included for council's information. Back in 2022, the chief financial officer brought forward a loan authorization bylaw to propose that $23.2 million would need to be borrowed to help fund the portion of the cost that under the grant. So at current rates, the annual debt payment associated with that $23 million debt would be $1.5 million over 30 years. And at that time, the resolution was proposed that those debt payments be funded with the implementation of the Parsec tax. And so if we take the current rate and what the annual debt payment would be, we would need a Parsec tax of $334 to fund those debt payments. So
that's a current number.
these are current numbers, so these
given
will be
current borrowing.
correct. So these will change, fluctuate until we actually go out for the borrowing partway through construction. We're looking at cash flow projections right now to even if the most advantageous to borrow that those funds.
Compared to the aquatic center, the wastewater treatment plant is looking like a heck of a deal. Now, the grant we got is much bigger,
Correct.
granted,
Yeah.
but nonetheless.
So, as we look ahead to the next 5-year financial plan, we'll be looking at including those annual debt payments across those 5 years of that plan and offsetting it with the proposed Parsec tax revenue. And I did mention on the next slide here that it's still the confirmed date of borrowing is still to be determined, which will impact the borrowing costs as well. So if we can skip ahead 2 slides then, please. Again, we don't need a resolution for this. This is just for further information and more information from the council as we get closer to that borrowing and needing to implement the Parsec tax. So now we can head into utility user fees. And the current 5-year financial plan bylaw has this objective to recover as much of the cost of the respective services as practical for user fees while maintaining user fee rates that are reasonable. So if we look on to the next slide, we can see a comparison of City of Kimberley's water, sewer, solid waste fees in comparison to neighboring communities. We're fourth from the top there at a total of $1,137 annual for 2025 collected for utility user fees. And they're not necessarily an exact comparison because all these communities may not have the exact same services because we have synthetic recycling and composting, so they may not have the same states. So on the next slide, I've just depicted what's currently in the 5-year financial plan bylaw as far as increases to the utility user fee for both sewer and water. But it is noted that each year we review the rates to make sure that they're reflective of economic conditions of the day. So this is just what's in there now, 5% increase and annual rate that's associated for each of those years. So if we look at sewer specifically, to the next slide, with these 5% annual increases, we're looking at annual average reserve contributions of approximately $838,000. And the last update we had of the asset management investment plan, which is from January of 2025, earlier this year, it noted that the asset category had a recommended average annual life cycle investment of $4.3 million. And I have noted that this could be skewed by the wastewater treatment plant. So there's further, once we have the construction cost, the final cost, and how that's going to be depreciating over the life of that asset, we'll have better dialed in numbers as far as what the annual investment needs to be in the sewer fund. But we can see we're falling significantly behind the annual investment.
Councilor McBain.
So Krista, just to clarify, so I guess in layman's terms, when we're including that wastewater treatment plan in, and we are, having a recommended annual investment to a life cycle, that's essentially kind of planning for the next one, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
You're exactly right. The one that we have on the books now is going to drop off.
Yep.
the new one will be added, and then now that, the value of that new one will be split across the lifetime of that asset, and we'll have to start planning to replace that
Yeah.
several years.
Yeah, so I think it's just good for the, you know, the public to realize, you know, the prudent approach is to try to, you know, shrink that shortfall as much as we can. Or just at least be mindful that, you know, we have to be thinking down the road, even with a new investment. Doesn't matter if it's a new wastewater treatment plant, new arena, new aquatic center. They're going to break down. We're going to have to pay for the next one. So it's a little scary, I will admit, but it's really good to have this laid out and understand what's going to be coming down the road for the next generation. So I really appreciate you adding this. This is super helpful.
So the shortfall or the recommended investment, as you mentioned here, is the 4.3 million is skewed because of the wastewater treatment plant or the impact of the wastewater treatment plant. So it would be closer to what the water relationship is. We'll get to that in a minute, I guess. But I guess the main point I want to make is that this is our investment contribution. It's tax dollars going into reserves that are then going to pay for the projects. It does not take into account any grant money for infrastructure that may or may not be available at the time we have a particular project. So, I mean, I think it would be utopian to expect that our utility fees are going to cover the entire thing. The question is, where's the balance in there? And when we talk about, pardon me, affordability in the community, even more so than taxes, the utility fees have a much higher impact on people like our senior citizens, on fixed incomes, et cetera. So we need to be really mindful of that as we're going through this.
Yes, that's a great point. As shown on the slide, like to fund that shortfall would require 147%. So we will have to look at possibly progressing user fee rates in an incremental manner to get closer to infrastructure funding that is needed over time. So here I've recommended that we maintain what has been previously set out in the 5-year financial plan, which is to increase sewer utilities by 5% in 2026. And how that's impact in dollars is there on the table. And it works out to $2.02 per month for the average family residents, for a 5% increase to sewer fees in 2026. And this also shows the impact going out to 2023 of 5% over those 5 years.
Councilor.
Yeah, I just want to say I support that. I think we need to keep bumping things up, and I think Mr. Mayor, you're exactly right about being sensitive to, you know, these are massive increases to an annual investment, and you're right. I think there could be things to help come down the road. I guess my point when we were on that last slide was just having people understand that, you know, just because you do something new, it doesn't mean we're gonna need new and even further down the road. So, long way of saying, yeah, I support this continued increase.
One last point on inflation. You know, we're talking about a 5% increase. We've got at a minimum, we're planning for a 2% inflationary increase across the board. So when we talk about a 5% increase, 2% of that's actually going to inflation. So the contribution is slim.
Okay, so the next slide, we're just seeking direction from council on in regards to the sewer utility.
5% increase. Yeah. I have a mover. Councilman Payne, thank you. Councilman Dwyer seconds. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried. Councillor Roberts, I cannot see you on the screen, so just interrupt when you have a comment or we need to hear. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so it's a similar story for water utility fees. We slide. We, over the next 5 years, are showing an annual average reserve contribution of approximately 1.48 million, with the recommended average life cycle investment being 2.89 million. So our shortfall there is 1.4 million, which would require increase of 53% to fully fund that gap. So similar stories to less of a deficit here, but this.
So just a comment. So the sewer kind of contribution was 800 some odd thousand versus 1.4 million for the water utility. Is that like, is water that much more expensive to maintain?
I think it's, yeah,
There's quite a
historically,
disparity there.
I can't speak to the history of, the overall, the operational cost of the water fund is more than the sewer fund. Not necessarily, Nick might be able to speak more closely to the infrastructure costs, but this would be more representative of the operating.
Right, okay. Comment?
Yeah, I agreed with Chris's comments there, and yeah, the the $90 million wastewater treatment plant is the big skew factor there, like, so. That is really the prime piece that's bumping up the difference there in the annual investment recommendation and the overall asset values there is that brand new treatment plants.
Okay, thanks. Councilor McGuire.
Yeah, water is pressurized and sewer is gravity. So there's cost differences in the infrastructure for sure.
14 pressure reducing stations to take care of that gravity.
Yeah. Woody's comment there is like, yeah, the simple systems that we have in place on the sewer side reflect those overall operating costs, and now that we have the new plant online, that's just huge bumps. So,
Go ahead.
I should probably know this, is the Mark Creek Dam, is that under the water side too? So that would be also a pretty significant cost there. So just wanted to make sure, because I didn't. Thanks.
We have reserves on the dam specifically, or is it just part of the water reserves?
I would have to confer with Krista, but I believe it's all just part of the general water reserve.
Yes, that's correct.
All right, thank you.
Miss Mayor, can I just ask one question? That shortfall, if we weren't doing the wastewater treatment plant, would we still have this shortfall, or is it all related to that?
We would still have a shortfall. It wouldn't be as significant. It would be probably closer to what the water.
Okay. Thank you.
So here again, it's been proposed that we maintain the 5% increase to water utility the water utility fees, which would result in a monthly increase of $2.28 per month for the average. If we can go to the next slide, then we can see how that increase will distribute over the next 5 years. An annual rate. So the next slide, we will hold off on the resolution on that for now and maybe steer our way into bulk water rates. Please. So in addition to the flat rate water utility fees, the water fee bylaw also includes a bulk water rate. And in 2025, this was set at 76 cents per cubic meter. And we have the listed primary users of bulk water there. And this rate had historically remained unchanged for 14 years between 2004 and 2017. Whereas by the flat rate utility, or the flat rate water rate had increased by over 41% during that same time period. And in 2017, an analysis was undertaken by consulting engineers who estimated that the bulk water rate was set at approximately 29% of what it costs to the city to provide water. We recognize that that is now outdated, so but however, council concluded based on that information provided by the engineer on the next slide that incremental increases to the bulk water rate were required over the years since 2018 in order to bring us closer to that cost of providing the service. So I provided a chart there to sort of demonstrate how that fee has increased since 2018. And they have varied between 10% and 20% within each year. So we recognize that the analysis that had been done previously is now 8 years old. So we did an internal calculation using the 2024 actual consumption of water adjusted for water loss and compared that to the 2026 projected budget, which resulted in a 2026 cost of providing water service within $1 per cubic meter. So with the rate currently at 76 cents, we are behind by the 24 cents or 32% lower than privacy. So on the next slide, I've just demonstrated how various increases would impact both the bulk water rate and some of our largest bulk water customers. And I will note on the bottom below the bottom table there, it is noted that RCR and Tech have the same cubic meter water usage, but Tech is actually 5,533 cubic meters. Noted there, 22,000 noted there.
Councillor Fox and Councillor McBain.
So just if I'm understanding this correctly, we all subsidize their water usage, essentially? Essentially, yeah. Okay, so if we just stop that and made them pay the $1, that's like just under 49 extra $1,000 for RCR, and then like 1,300 for Tech. Okay.
Yeah, to be clear, it was the city and councils of the day over those 14 years that chose not to take those increases. And we have had a plan since 2016 to take anywhere from the 10 to 20% a year. So we've only got 2 years left at 15%, and we're caught up. Go ahead, Councilor McBain.
Yeah, I understand the point that Councillor Fox is making, but I think I think we had a kind of a chosen course. I'm comfortable with sticking with that. I understand that, especially in the case of RCR, you know, you could look at it and say, well, yeah, they have the money, but at the same time, the ski hill brings people to town. The golf courses bring people to town. We subsidize other things, and so I'm comfortable with the plan that we've got set out. We're doing significant increases every year, and I'm totally comfortable with maintaining.
Yeah, and to add on to that, in conversations that I've had with RCR recently, their operating plan starts October the 1st. So in addition to taking this increase this year, we need to give them notice that as of next fiscal year, there'll be another 15%, so they can actually plan for it. Right now, they don't plan current their operating plan because they have no idea what that would or not be. Go ahead, Councillor Dunlap.
Excuse me. Yeah, I understand the cost of the water and all, but we need to retain some money so we can keep the infrastructure that we have. The one thing that I haven't heard anybody talk about is the fact that we don't have any. And what is our plan for the future going forward as we get the golf courses and the development and all that stuff? Do we have some sort of plan looking at the creeks and or other options of tanks and storing and recycling for, you know, like the plausibility of RCR and Triple Creek working together to retain and pump water from places, much like the Kimberly Gulf first, now Purcell does, just to, if we can recycle that and sprinkle that 2 or 3 times before it's perked in, to reduce our impact on the environment. Well, I'd love to hear where we're going.
So
with
can you
that.
give us a brief update on water?
Yeah, for sure. No, thanks, Coach. For done and back. So as council may recall, we do have a water supply study in the works right now. It's ongoing. There's kind of 2 phases to that. One is kind of, yeah, looking at the overall capacity of what you can pull out of our 2 sources, Mark Creek and Matthew Creek, and to look into the future and look at climate change models and everything like that, and what can we reasonably expect to continue to pull out of there in terms of full capacity. And then the phase 2 of that is looking at our distribution network and kind of capacity within our network to supply increasing demand in areas where we know that the developments are proposed, and kind of globally looking out to we're looking at about, I think, a 15 or 20-year horizon. We don't want to go too much further than that, but just kind of look at our distribution system as a whole and see are there holes or things that require upgrades with this increased demand that we're seeing. So those are in the works. I was hoping to have those brought forth before the end of the year, but it looks like it might be early next year that we'll bring this to council and review those.
I know we've been making headway with the various projects. We have at least 1 or 2 that we do each year. What is the situation with regard to leakage?
Again, we have a great question, and we have a study that is was planned for this year, but then we kind of pivoted and went after a grant opportunity through the strategic priority funds, and we lumped in our I&I, which is inflows and infiltration on the sewer side, with the water loss on the water supply side. We applied for a grant on that. We're waiting to hear back on the results of that grant before we trigger that work. And if we don't get that, not successful in that grant, we'll be looking at other options to move forward with those, because those are important projects to really focus the limited funds that we do have on ensuring that we're addressing those leaks and sustaining the future.
Yeah. So if I remember correctly from previous reports, Nick, the single biggest thing we can do to enhance our water capacity is stop leaks. It's about 40-some% the water that's used is.
Yeah, for the I think it was 2011 report, it was targeted at that. We have made improvements since. And so, yeah, that's really just trying to capture, okay, what is the actual real losses that we're seeing right now with the improvements that we've made, and focus on, yeah, where do we focus on our money going forward for those.
Great. Further? Go ahead, Councillor Nairns.
So it made me think about when you're talking about the investments that need to go in, we're also looking at the dam itself and potential of the dam itself. And then I'm also wondering kind of another topic that it's around water supply, climate change, and say those longer periods of drought and our actual storage capacity, and whether we need any backup storage capacity. I'm just thinking about hearing that in kind of that September dry period that we had, how quickly people were really, concerned that we were still on, lawn watering. But really, it was important that we not be that at that period of time. And so that whole storage piece, I'm wondering how that's being viewed in this study.
Yeah, great council question there. And it is going to be part of it. As you know, our reservoir has a very limited storage capacity in it. It does have, I think it's 900,000 cubic meters is storage capacity, but the design of the dam is that it's a constant overflowing dam. So it needs that flow to provide the riparian needs for downstream of the dam. And so when we look at our setting our water restrictions. If we are ever in a place where we're actually just pulling from the reservoir and there's no water overtopping the dam, we're going to be in the highest level of water restrictions. And if we were to look at it, I think we would only have about 20 days of actual reservoir capacity if there was no inflow into that dam. So we have a very limited capacity on actual storage. And that would be part of it is do we need to buffer up our capacity in terms of, depending on what the results of this supply study are and what the modeling is telling us in terms of flows on the future of Mark Creek and everything like that. It's kind of all encompassing on that, and it would have recommendations on whether we should be looking at further storage capacity or what that looks like. Yeah.
So we're really,
Yeah, too early to say what those recommendations are, but it's definitely part of that.
thanks for that, Nick. Back to you, Krista.
Okay, excellent. So on the next slide, we're seeking direction from council on two separate resolutions. One giving a 5% increase on the utility fee, and then the second resolution is to the bulk water rate.
All right, first resolution, mover please. Councilor Dane, thank you. Councilor Karen seconds. Further discussion? Those in favor? That motion is carried.
If I could on the next one, just as a suggestion on the bulk water rate, the notion of giving RCR a heads up, if council wants to go with the 15% as recommended. And then we could also tag on to the end of that, a further increase from 87 cents to $1 effective January 1st, 2027. So that decision is made, might save some money next year, and then that's set. We can tell RCR that that's what we done. Okay. Resolution is amended.
All right, mover. Councilor McBain moves and Councilor McGuire seconds. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried.
Okay. Thank you very much. We'll move on to the solid waste collection fee. As noted previously, we have added two new services. This is go to the next slide there. In 2018, moved to the automated side loading garbage collection truck. In 2021, we implemented the curbside recycling collection service. In 2023, implemented curbside organic. With the introduction of these new services, it is hopeful that by doing that, we can divert some of the garbage that has been going to the central sub-region of the landfill. And with the intention that it would hopefully reduce the RDK requisition in the future. We don't have any data as to what that might be yet, but potentially with this version of this, the garbage, you could actually see some decrease in the requisition.
Let's not plan on that too tightly. You have to see, aside from parcel taxes where money is paid off, it's rare that you would see a reduction. Any kind, including from us. Councilor McGuire and Councilor McKinnon.
Yeah, we had a presentation from the RDK around this, and I'm curious whether there's been any discussions around some sort of incentive for us having implemented the organics versus other communities, and even, looking at the rates of tipping that Kimberly does versus other communities. My guess is that not only are we early adopters, we're probably strong supporters of the organic waste system, which really does reduce loads on the central. I'm losing my words here, but you get my point.
Central landfill. Yeah. That was one of the reasons why we got the big grant from them to actually purchase all of the, I think it was, $300,000 or something to purchase our cans.
Yeah, I would guess that there is some sort of reduction in costs to that, to the long-term costs to the RDK. So I'm just curious if there's any possibility of having that conversation again with them.
Councilor McBain, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I'm comfortable with the recommendation here. I guess I just wanted to, kind of applaud staff, Nick and the crew. I think, our solid waste collection, if you, at least for the 7 and some years that I've been on council, like watching where it's come from to where it is now and watching the participation. There was some naysayers about the organic stuff. I honestly thought bears would be way more of an issue than they have been. But yeah, just kudos. I mean, this is I think has been rolled out really well, and it's just wonderful to see the participation that the town has undertook. And I think I agree with you, Woody. I think it's really making a difference.
It's hard to believe it's just been 7 years since the automated garbage collection. I think it was only for a year or so before that, we mandated the bins. And prior to that, like 2015, believe it or not, it was garbage bags on the curb. Money we've saved in workers' compensation has probably been pretty significant too. Okay, go ahead.
Have we looked at the cost versus paying GFL to purchase our own truck? Maybe buy more stuff, so we retain all of that money as a municipality rather than paying a private corporate company? Just the balance of, owning our own stuff versus paying.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Dunbeck. We have done some high level checks, and GFL contract comes due this year, in summer. So we'll be taking a deeper dive on that and seeing if it makes sense. Moving this towards an in-house thing or for the contract.
Go ahead.
Okay, so the next slide just demonstrates that the current revenues for all 3 services are sufficient to cover the cost of providing those services. So we're recommending that those fees stay the same as the 2025. Change, we did in June of 2025 bring to council that Recycle BC had increased their incentive payments, so we reduced the 2025 recycling rate from $9.96 per year to $4.80 per year to reflect that increased incentive. So this would maintain that decrease.
All right, so no increases across all 3. First motion on the floor is that council direct staff for the refuse collection that the fees remain unchanged. Mover, Councilor Payne, thank you. And Councilor McGuire seconds. All those in favor? That motion is carried. Next up, we have same motion for recycling collection that rates remain unchanged. Councilor Cairns moves, Councilor Fox seconds. All those in favor? That motion is carried. Finally, same motion for organics collection that fees remain unchanged. Councilor Dwyer moves, Councilor Cairns seconds. All those in favor? That motion is carried.
Excellent. Thank you very much. So on the next slide, I have the proposed next steps. So with the information provided by council tonight, move ahead with bringing forward the sewer rate and water rate bylaw amendment the next regular council meeting. And then on December 1st, we will have the 2026 to 2030 capital and non-capital project plan for council's review. And then December 8th, proposing that we give back these water rate bylaws for adoption. We do plan to have the operating budget for later in January.
All right. Awesome, Krista. Council, last call for comments or questions. Thank you, ma'am. Much appreciated. A lot of work has gone into this. At the beginning. So looking forward to next steps. Thanks, Krista. Thanks for being here tonight, Nick. Council, move adjournment. Councillor Dunnaback moves, Councillor Fox seconds, all those in favor? That motion is carried. We're done. Thanks, Councillor Roberts.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night.